Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 29th of March, comes to you from London. And we see that equities have mostly been rising overnight, just the green there in the global stock indices. Taking a look, first of all, at currencies, dollar continuing to look strong on the index. This is the dollar index, bullish on all three time frames. So for the moment, it's dollar strength. Eurodollar is actually up slightly, but it is bearish on all three time frames against the dollar. So dollar strong, euro weak is very much the macro theme. We're seeing against the yen, the dollar has turned bullish on the short-term chart as well, and so we're bullish here too. Against the pound, pound is falling against that stronger dollar, but pound is actually falling on its own. Back to that 130 level this morning, just testing 130. But with the turmoil on Brexit, that's really starting to create quite a bit of uncertainty around sterling. We're seeing sterling lower against the euro as well. A shortage of clear downside targets on the short-term charts here for sterling, but it is bearish there on the short-term chart. In the Swiss franc, we're seeing that fall away as well. A downside target of 104, which is 20% downside, is activated. So we've got two targets there sort of pointing in that direction against the Swiss franc, and against the Aussie dollar, much the same picture. We're bearish there as well. So sterling weakness is really following through. Bitcoin, little change over the last few days, trying to just move into bullish territory on the medium-term chart. It's pretty flat performance for the last several months. We've been hovering around this $3,000-$4,000 level. So at the moment, it's a pretty boring chart to be honest. Taking a look at the S&P 500 index, that was up just over 1/3% last night, holding on to the bullish territory there. Nasdaq was also up, and all eyes on the debut of Lyft this morning in the US. So be interesting to see how that opens when the market opens there today. The Dow up 1/3%, just not quite back into bullish territory on the short-term chart, but overall still looking pretty good medium and long term. And the Russell 2000 has lagged really. We're seeing the smaller caps in the US just struggling to keep up with the blue chips. We've got the futures suggesting a higher opening today. We've got the S&P future up 0.2%, the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.29%. So a lot of expectation around this Lyft float. So it'll be quite interesting to see how that goes. The UK market is up 0.5% this morning, just pushing a bit higher. Remember that 75% of earnings of the top 100 companies in the UK are non-sterling related. So sterling falling has a positive effect on the blue chip stocks. And we're seeing actually midcaps this morning where that effect is less so, are also up, although we're still bearish on the short-term chart. So that's quite interesting. Mid-caps bearish, and blue chips, the FTSE 100, actually looking more bullish as it's sort of finding support in the cloud there. The DAX in Germany is up just over 1/3%, but still bearish on the short-term chart. The European markets just haven't recovered the same way the US markets have, and the CAC 40, actually still the strongest performer in Europe, is looking better this morning, but still not quite making it back into bullish territory on the lagging line. Is on the price though, so CAC 40 is proving resilient. Japanese stocks up 0.6%. That weaker yen helping a little bit. We saw a real yo-yo over the last few days in the Japanese market. It's still bearish long term on the chart, which is counter to most other markets. So still a weak looking chart. And the Hang Seng recovering up nearly 1%, so we're seeing an improvement there. And China, the Shanghai Composite up 3.2%, pushing back into bullish territory. We've got this consolidation pattern here for the last few weeks. Looks like we're going to break and run higher, and so we'll activate these upside targets, which spells the end of gloom for Chinese stocks if we can do that. We just need to break to new highs there. The Sensex is up just under 0.2%, but it really is if you talk about the tortoise and the hare, the Sensex market is just steadily rising, and the Indian stock market is still probably the best looking stock market going at the moment. Taking a look at the Aussie market, up very slightly, but just struggling to really break this consolidation over the last several weeks. Looking at commodities now, we've got Brent crude up 0.4% this morning, so that's looking stronger, and WTI is actually up 0.75%, and that's also just pushing into bullish territory. So crude oil looking pretty strong across the board. US nat gas sitting at $2.70, not looking quite as good, and still in that bearish pattern on all three time frames. No clear downside targets on the short-term chart. We do have a scary downside target to $2.14, or for the 20% lower on the medium-term chart, but it is a lone target. Gold is sitting at 1288. That's fallen away very sharply over the last few days. We're still medium-term and long-term bullish, but it's looking a little bit like a bit of a head and shoulders developing there if you look at the lagging line on the long-term chart. No clear downside target short-term, so it's too early to say whether we'll go much lower, and this might just be that we're finding some support in the cloud. Silver is actually up slightly this morning, but again, it's been pretty bearish too. That dollar strength really not helping at all. US 10-year yields are really looking still very bearish on all three time frames. We've gone through the long-term cloud on the lagging line now, and we are seeing downside targets to 2.25%. So a very different picture from potential of 4% bond yields. Now we're looking completely the other way, with US bonds weakening, with the outlook of interest rates probably not even rising this year in the US. The bond future is actually up, it's just showing that bond prices rising, yields falling in Europe, so we're seeing that as well. This data all coming to you from Thomson Reuters Icon, or if you're a private user, Metastock Zenith. It's a brilliant system, and you can see here it gives us good coverage with the intraday charts. Looking to stocks now, I'm using the Yahoo Finance data here. So this is great. This is my long-term, my medium-term, and my short-term picture, although I don't have the 60-minute charts with Yahoo that I would have with Metastock or Thomson Reuters. But taking a look here at the global markets, we see here just on the world indices, we're up on all markets. Mexico was down, but all markets up, and the same in Asia. The only market down was Indonesia. So we're seeing big moves there across the board. Taking a look at the Dow last night, just ranking by performance, we've got Nike at the top. They were up over 1%. JP Morgan also up. And there were only 4 stocks down on the Dow last night, and that was Verizon was the worst performer, down just under 3%. But the chart really not affected. They're just hitting some resistance there. The Nasdaq 100, again, if we just look at the bellwethers, we've got Google. They were down 0.4%. Apple was actually up 0.13%. Facebook was down 0.19%. The best performer overall was Lululemon Athletica. They are breaking to new highs, looking very strong indeed. Some good upside targets here as well. So we are seeing and good outperformance. We're so far outperforming the Dow by 12% this year. Taking a look at the worst performer, T-Mobile. We saw mobile stocks hit in the US. T-Mobile were down 4%. Vodafone was down 2.5%. And the relatives all looking pretty bad there, and the chart's bearish as well. So telecom stocks in the US not looking great at the moment. Aussie market, the best performer was Super Retail Group, up 5.6%. And that's starting to look like quite a good recovery situation. On the downside, we had Eclipse Group down 4%. They've just fallen out of bed over the last few weeks, and we saw last week they had a massive down week, and that's showing through. They've underperformed the market so far this year by 75% versus the Dow, so really just a stock that has just plummeted. So it's hard to say where the bottom is there, but of course that's not looking great. Chinese stocks, it's a sea of green because the whole Chinese market, every stock in the index was up. One stock down, I should say. Shandong Mining were down 1.74%. We had a lot of these financial stocks. China Galaxy up 10%. Really big rises against with Chinese financials. Looking at the Nifty 50 in India, again just ranking by performance. Best performer was India Bulls. Remember they had a terrible end to 2018. Starting to look like quite a good recovery here on India Bulls. Z Entertainment also had a real wobble at the start of this year and just starting to recover, so they might be making a recovery as well. Adani Ports were up 4% as well and starting to look like another recovery situation. On the downside, we did have about 10 stocks down Oil and natural gas were down 2.6%, but the medium-term chart also suggests a recovery there. And Tata Steel down 1.8%, and again, we're just seeing signs of recovery there as well. And here you see the live prices coming in from Yahoo Finance now as we speak. Taking a look at Europe, the FTSE 100 this morning, pretty buoyant, as we said, on that weaker sterling. Resource stocks are the top performers. The top 4-5 performers are all resource stocks. Antofagasta up 2.4%, Rio Tinto up 2.4% as well, breaking to new highs there. Glencore also looking very strong, very good recovery looking situation there. Anglo American have really looked fantastic over the last few weeks, and then BHP. So the top 5 stocks are all resources stocks. We're seeing also some of the others, financials, all looking pretty good as well. On the downside, we do still have some pretty poor performances. We've got TUI down 9.6% this morning, having had a terrible year so far. They've underperformed the down by nearly 40%, and down another 10% this morning is just not helping. So breaking to new lows for TUI. We've still got a further downside target of 24% there, so that's looking pretty worrying. AstraZeneca not looking great, and EasyJet also not looking great. We're seeing a fall away here and back into bearish territory and really testing the support level. Looking at the FTSE 250, the mid caps, just ranking by percentage here. Ferrex Pro, another resource stock, looking higher. Man Group also in the top performers there. On the downside, we've got Vicdex Group down 3.5%. That chart starting to look like a real bear trend developing, having broken down through the cloud, so not looking great there either. And then last of all, a quick look at the top stocks in Europe. Ranking by percentage performance, we see we've got on the top performers, we've got Kering in Paris. Notice how 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the first 6 stocks are all French stocks that are up. And remember, we said that the French market was still looking like the strongest market. Here we've got LVMH breaking to new highs. So we're really seeing a lot of these. Schneider Electric in France also up 1.3% and looking strong as well. On the downside in Europe, we've got 5 stocks down this morning, and Deutsche Telekom down 5%. Telecom stocks being hit globally by the looks of things, with those US falls, and Eurodollar down 0.2%, but most of the other falls are pretty small. It's just that Deutsche Telekom fall that's the big news this morning. That's it for today. Until Monday, happy charting. Have a great weekend. See you then.